Hi, this is Vince, Auto Restoration Videos. Today we're going to be working on a 82 Porsche. What we're going to be doing is removing the antenna and filling the hole that the antenna gets placed in. Because now they come out with antennas that actually mount right on your front windshield. So there's no more need to have that ugly stupid antenna sticking out of the fender. I think destroys, half the look of the car. What we're going to do is we're going to weld in a washer about 3/4 of an inch diameter into that hole using a MIG welder. But we got a couple problems here we have to watch out for. First thing is we have to make sure we disconnect the battery completely. That's both cables. And the second thing is, this applies to all cars right now that have a computer in it. Alright? You want to disconnect that computer, because if you put a big surge from like a MIG welder going through that body, it could travel up through the ground side and short out your whole computer. Alright? So you have to unplug your computer, and if there's some kind of metal to metal contact with that computer somehow, like I have a metal frame around my computer and it's bolted right to the floor, well, that whole thing has to come out. Because even if you disconnect your wires and the big plug in the front and all that stuff, there's still a chance current could come up through the ground and go through the computer and short it out. And the same thing with your radio now. Disconnect the ground on your radio and make sure your key is in the off position. Alright, even with your battery connected, you want to make sure it's in the off position, because that will break the circuit. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and remove my little computer in here and disconnect that radio. Just not disconnect the radio, just the cables going to it, pull out a couple plugs or something, and especially the ground wire. Here is the antenna hole, which I ground off the paint. You should go back, I'd say, a good ½ inch. Now I scraped this off with a lot of this with my penknife. I think I might have to go back a little more here. So you got to prep it up. Now you want to make sure before you start welding that if you have any glass or you have a windshield in your car or something, you got to cover it with something like a heavy-duty cotton or a wool material or something like that, because if one of your little flying pieces of molten metal goes out and hits that windshield, you can leave a chip in it and eventually it will crack. And the rest of your glass and car too, your hood, you should cover your hood, cover the rest of the fender over here, cover as much as you can. I'd say anywhere is within 4 feet, because this might start spitting. You never know what's going to happen when you start welding. You might want to take off your tire too, just to be on the safe side. Have a fire extinguisher ready. Check your area to make sure you have no rags laying around, papers laying around, old oil drain pans with oil in it or something. Be very careful. Double, triple check everything. The last thing you want is a fire. Now what you have to do is find yourself a washer that is going to fit into that antenna hole in the fender. Then you have to fill the washer in with weld and grind it down. And once you get this washer to fit right into that hole, then you can go ahead and tack weld this rod, a welding rod, into the bottom. Now the idea is this is going to go all the way down, fit into that hole, the antenna hole, and we have this wire here, this welding rod. We're going to attach our clamp to this, our welding clamp. So this way, when we weld it in to the body, our negative clamp is going to be right here, and so the current will just flow right up in this one area. it won't travel out throughout the rest of the car, and really cut down immensely the chance of destroying the electronics in the car if you use this method. Now, if you just want to get your clamp and go ahead and hook it somewhere in the front of the car, under your bumper or something, 6 feet away from where you're welding, good luck, buddy. You're on your own. Now you notice I have my ground clamp connected right to the welding wire that is connected to my little washer that is right up here. Now it might look like it's sticking up a little bit, but really it's not. It's just the fender is beat down there. But it's all a low area anyway and has to be filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and get my grinder, my welder now, and just spot weld in a little bit at a time. Now I'm going to be using this MIG Welder set on the second heat range, big. I'm using a Lincoln MIG Welder with CO2. I'm not getting enough penetration because the metal is really thick. I'm going to have to go up to the next heat range. But I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for this thing to cool off. Now what we're getting is kind of a big ball. We don't want the metal to really build up on the outside. We want a lot of penetration. So that's why I'm turning up my power. Okay, we're going to try this again, the next heat range. I should turn it on. It's much better. Okay, I'm going to wait a couple more minutes before I take any more spots on there. Another reason why I'm being so careful is I didn't remove any of the undercoating underneath of this. So, I don't want that catching fire. I'm going to do just a couple more spots, and then that's it. That should do it. We'll let this cool off and we'll be right back. Now I will be using a little cutoff wheel on this. It has a pretty loud noise, so you might want to wear some hearing protection. Now you might ask why I'm using this and not a regular grinding stone. This is much more accurate, and this is much quicker too. Except you got to have a little eye-hand coordination or you can't use it. It's almost done already. Okay, you got to watch though where your sparks are going, because they could go all over the place. Now I just got a little bit more to do, and we'll be right back to you. Now, after that, you want to cut off that metal bar that's underneath. Just get yourself one of these butt type cutters. Put it all the way up flush to underneath that washer and give it a clip. That's all there's to it. Now you want to get yourself an angle grinder with about, one of those little stone pads on it. This one is almost shot. I'm going to have to replace this. Should have like 80 grit on there or something. Then we just want to make get the paint away about 1.5 inches all the way around our weld, because we're going to put some body filler down. Body filler I'm using is going to be fiberglass, so this way it's waterproof. So it has to stick to metal, clean metal. So we got to clean the metal 1 inch around our whole weld here. I'm just going to start doing a little bit of it, because it could get a little time consuming. That's enough. That's it. All right, now we want to check to make sure this thing is level, which I did before, I think. You can always put a little more wheel on there. Yeah, that should be good. I'm going to go ahead and get some body filler, mix it up, and throw it on there. Now, if you look through here, you see the original prime, you see the original color, then you see another hint of gray, and then you see the epoxy body filler, then you see the other paint that was put on not too long ago, and I think I got a little oil on here, which is not good. You should really not even touch that area now, because if you're touching an air tool, what happens is you're going to transfer that oil onto your work, and what's going to happen is this stuff will never stick. So I'm going to have to go over that with some degreaser, or you can even go over with some lacquer thinner or enamel reducer, or any kind of good degreaser that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that now. You will need some fiberglass body filler. Make sure it's mixed up before you use it. Get yourself out a little glob. You don't need much, only doing a little spot. Get yourself some hardener. It's a hot day out, so we don't need too much. Just a couple drops. And we're going to mix it up. Make sure you mix it real well. You don't see any streaks in there. If you're still seeing streaks, you haven't mixed it well enough. Then you just go smear it on top of that hole. Nothing fancy here, just like putting icing on a cupcake. I put on a little more than I normally put on, but we'll cut that right off. Now let's let it set up for a while. Now let's try not to ruin any more of the finish than we have to. I put 2 layers of this blue painter's tape on here, so when I go to shave it down, you can try not to hit this paint. Now let's try a fingernail test. If you can just put your fingernail in and leave a mark, then you can break out your cheese grater. If not, you got to wait a little bit. Now this is a cheese grater. You can go to a lot of hardware stores and get this. This is good for like removing foam. The thing is, if you use this and your putty isn't set up enough, you're going to clog every pore you have here. Then you might as well get this whole screen, the blade, and just throw it away and go out and buy a new one. You got to make sure that you test the stuff before you put this on it, because you could just have to see your fingernail mark in there. Then you know she's ready to be graded. I'd say give it another minute. It still has the potential to clog. Oh, don't forget, put some tape on the back too. Of course, you do come backwards a little bit. Let's give it a shot now and see what happens. Now, if you see nice little curly stuff in your blade, then you know it's good. Now, this is going to really get it down close to the shape that we want it. Otherwise, you'd be here 20 minutes with a sanding board just to get to the same position that I'm going to have this thing in a couple sweeps. You got the idea. I'm going to keep on going on this. Okay, I got it pretty close. I could have got it closer, but then I would have really chewed up all the paint, especially below here. Alright, now, you're going to get ourselves a small rubber sanding block. I guess about maybe 3-4 inches long. And we're going to put some number 80 sandpaper on it. And we're going to try to sand in this localized area here. This is what I'm using. Krylon primer, gray. Make sure you mix it real good. Spray it first time away from the car to make sure the nozzle's clear. Keep it moving. Now we're only spraying it like this because you can't put touch-up body filler directly on metal. You shouldn't even put it directly on body filler either. You're supposed to put it on prime. So that's almost it. We got to wait for it to dry. Then we'll come back with the heavy spot putty, which is nothing but heavy paint. And we'll smear that on. Then we sand that down and prime it one more time after that, and then we'll be done. Well, this is the way it looks like. I didn't even put the body putty on yet. I only have one little low spot right here that I'm going to put it on. I just put a little body putty on. There's only a couple little specks that I really had to fill in. But I'm going to use this little tiny spreader here. I like it better when you get it out of a can. Of course, if it's in a can, you can mix it. When you use one of these tubes, what happens is you get all the liquid out first. And it doesn't allow for too good of a application factor, if you know what I mean. But we're going to let that dry and sand it down with maybe some 180 dry paper and see where we're at. Now you want to sand that putty down. I'm using the 180. And after you get that putty sanded down, should use a dry cloth. Just go over it one more time. Just go over it one more time with a dry, clean cloth, lint-free, and you can go ahead and shoot another coat of primer on there, or maybe two, and you're good to go. Then all you got to do is just put your top coat on. But that's about it. This is Vince, Auto Restoration Videos. Don't forget to check out my new website and click on my Facebook link to see a more detailed description of this work that has been done. Well, happy motoring, guys.